Alle Teilnehmer befinden sich im Zuhörermodus.
Hello everybody. Before we start with the introduction, I would like to wait for another 2 minutes to provide some extra time for those whose login takes a little longer, okay? So we'll be back in 2 minutes. Hi everybody. I would like to welcome you to our webinar. My name is Michael Meistian from Hype's marketing team, and today I will support Colin Nelson, Director Enterprise Innovation at Hype, with this webinar on key considerations when you want to launch a successful open innovation initiative. Some of you may have noticed that we had a similar webinar a couple of years ago, but since open innovation in its various facets is becoming more and more important to many companies out there, we thought we should just offer it again with some updated concepts and examples. Before we start, I would like to give you a brief overview of our upcoming webinars and events, as well as some basic information regarding the Q&A functionality of GoToWebinar, which you may use during the presentation to submit questions. So looking at our webinar series, we have the next one coming up in June with Ian Muir from All Change, a consultancy specializing in visualizing strategic business challenges and innovation strategy. Colin and I just had a chat with him yesterday, but we still need to agree on the exact date and topic. But no worries, you'll be the first to know once we're ready. And then we are looking forward to a series of expert interviews and first-hand experience presentations from innovation managers around the globe in the second half of the year. So October, we have an interview with Roel de Vries and Sarah Kelly from Liberty Global, sharing insights and answering questions about their innovation program. If you would like to get a glimpse of the amazing things these guys are doing with their program, you can just download our deep dive case study from our website. Then event-wise, we are now getting close to our big annual conference in Bonn from May 17th to 19th. The registration has now closed with 180 representatives from 18 different countries. However, you are welcome to sign up for the waiting list now. And we've already penciled in 3 regional forums for the second half of the year. One in the UK and one hosted by the University of California, San Diego, and one hosted by Continental in Hanover. All right, then let me just give you a brief overview of the Q&A functionality of GoToWebinar, and we are ready to go. On your control panel, you'll find a section called Questions. You can simply enter your question in the text box. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a Q&A session to answer them. In case we run out of time before all questions are answered, we will get back to you afterwards, okay? So to answer the most common question right away, yes, you will receive the presentation afterwards. And now I would like to hand over to Colin.
Thanks, Mitch. Great to be with everybody again. As Mitch said, this is a refresh on a topic that we've addressed some years ago. What we wanted to do is kind of bring people up to date with our latest observations, our latest experiences, and some examples from different companies that help illustrate what's really happening out there in the field of open innovation. As you'll be aware, if you've got even a cursory knowledge of the field, it's a very, very broad range of activities. And what I want to do to give us some focus is obviously talk from our experiences of engaging third parties, communities, partners, customers using online tools. So that's the kind of zone that we're going to be focusing on today. For those of you who haven't listened to one of our webinars before and perhaps aren't aware of me, I run Hype's Enterprise Innovation Consulting Group, and I've been in the field for 18 years, focused on innovation for the last 10, and my day job is to support typically large, complex organizations to establish effective and sustainable enterprise programs and inter-enterprise programs, which is the piece of the puzzle we're going to be focused on today. A little bit about Hype for those of you who are, again, new to the organization. We've been in business around 16 years now, founded as a spin-off out of Daimler originally, headquartered in Bonn, Germany, with offices elsewhere in the world, in places such as Boston, Abu Dhabi, Lyon, London, and Denver. And we're focused 100% on innovation management, harnessing the collective expertise of large, diverse groups of people focused on business needs, and then taking those ideas, develop them into concepts through to execution. So we have a whole range of software solutions in multiple different shapes and sizes to deal with different types of circumstances. And if you'd like more information about that, then obviously our website, hypeinnovation.com, is a good source to go and look at. And as you might imagine, yes, software is important and is a key part of the puzzle in engaging large, diverse groups, but also there are other parts of the puzzle that we need to think about. Specifically, the process. How do we get people to engage? How do we ensure that people feel comfortable participating and sharing at a high level of quality? How technically do we integrate these platforms into our clients' infrastructures? And of course, some advisory work around that, which is where my part of the business exists. And as you can imagine, this sort of proposition is attractive to companies that have a lot of people, not exclusively, but they're the main adopters of these sorts of approaches. Anyone with a large enterprise, people operating in different countries, will typically find that they struggle to get the right people in the room collaborating on the things that they want to see. And so we have all kinds of different organizations, and we're picking out some of these as good examples of open innovators as we go through today's session. So to move on to today's agenda, this is quite a meaty set of slides. As Mitch said, you're going to get a copy of the recording. It's going to be available to everybody. But we've got some territory to cover. It's always tricky with a topic like open innovation. What do we include and what do we exclude? But what I've tried to do is to focus on some topics that I think are relevant to all innovators, no matter where you are in the maturity curve. One of the exciting things about open innovation is it's continuing to evolve. So new things are emerging, new projects, new techniques, new activities are emerging all the time. And I hope that even if you're an experienced innovator, you'll still see something here that surprises and interests you when we get to the examples and what's really happening in open innovation. But to start off, we're going to set the scene. Why is it that organizations care about this space? Why are organizations using online tools to engage with third parties? We'll then dig into some examples. I have 4 examples picked out for you, which are all different in nature to try and illustrate different types of things that we're seeing in the flesh. We'll move on to some tools that help, and these are not necessarily applications like we sell. These are tools that I use in my part of the business, in the sort of the consulting and process guidance space. How do we actually make this stuff fly? What sort of steps do we go through? Because yes, the application will help us give us scale and rigor of process, but getting people to share, getting people to collaborate, ensuring that people share what's important in a secure way, there are some challenges there, and we need to make sure that we run these programs in an effective way. So what I want to do is just give you a slice of the method and the approach that we go through to help you sort of begin to visualize what those sort of first steps might be, or if you're struggling with this, where you might be struggling. And then we'll round up with some tips to get started. So let's just set the scene. As I mentioned right off the bat, what's considered open innovation is a very, very broad range of activities. And for any of you that have looked at Henry Chesbrough's book, I think it was published some 15 years ago or something now, you will recall he has this famous leaky funnel. And that encapsulates a range of different activities that are all considered on this open innovation banner. And just to get everybody on the same page, I want to make it very clear that open innovation isn't new. Organizations have been partnering, working with customers, working with suppliers, working with academia forever. That's not new, but systematizing it, doing it at scale, organizing it and managing it in a very effective and systematic way is relatively new to most organizations. There aren't many companies out there that you could say, wow, they are really mature when it comes to open innovation. They may do one slice of it very well, but they probably don't do everything in Henry Chesbrough's so-called leaky funnel. So it's worth bearing in mind that different companies tend to be able to give us different examples to learn from. Not everybody does everything. You'll quickly run out of capacity, and often we find that some methods and some approaches are more successful than others. I want to sort of focus on two main directions today. The first one is companies that are adding some external aspects to their already systematized internal innovation programs. So they're already using online tools to harness the collective expertise of perhaps their employees, and they at a certain point go, well, let's include some customers in this, or let's include some suppliers in this conversation. We're already doing this, but we think more diversity of opinion is going to add some value. Now, the second core direction is to systematize some of our existing open innovation program activities to increase its scale. So perhaps you're already working with external partners, but you want to increase the scope or the quality of what's happening, and we're going to use some tools to do that. Those are the sort of two main early stage directions that organizations tend to take. Now, there is a third zone, which we will touch on as well, but we won't go into too much detail on it. There are some new activities that are also possible by using the technology wisely and applying what we know about how large, diverse groups behave online that perhaps weren't possible before. And this typically comes under the banner of complex networks or very, very large scale. So if we've got lots of people from lots of different types of organizations, it's very difficult to, in a manual way, engage them in a coordinated fashion. But certainly some of the things that we've learned, and I have one example for you picked out on this, gives us some techniques and some tools to actually begin to address that challenge as well. But mainly we'll focus on those first two. Now, the topic of innovation, of course, is a broad one, and open innovation is a subset of that. But it's worth just thinking about, why are people doing this at all? Why are organizations investing in tools? Why are they looking to harness collective insight? Why are they trying to systematize their external activities? And it almost always boils down to two major activities: growth and efficiency. So we want to be able to gain a very competitive advantage. We want to be able to adapt to market changes. We might be even in an adapt or die type situation, but growth is still fundamentally one of the biggest reasons why organizations care about open innovation. Of course, then there's the efficiency piece as well. Well, we're working with many suppliers. Can we include them to help improve our processes, make us more efficient, perhaps reduce our costs by choosing better, lower cost suppliers who can also meet our quality demands? By far and away, the bigger driver for open innovation is still the growth one. Now, underpinning those two, there are some circumstances that we also need to take into account, which again promote people to think that maybe there's a better way, maybe that not all the smartest people work for us, and we should start including some external groups at some point in time as well. And pace of change is a critical one. I'm sure all of you are exposed to change in many different ways. The pace of change is only increasing due to new technologies and globalization, and that's meaning that the companies need to become more agile. We need to get doing better at shifting and adapting when that change happens. We may not be able to predict the future, but we know that change will happen. How can we adapt to that in a more effective manner? And I've not met an organization of any scale that doesn't suffer from some degree of silo working. So again, the more global that you are, the more globally distributed, or even within one country you are, the more you'll find that it's difficult to get the right people talking to each other. And increasingly, we need to find a way to build new teams, new groups of people that sit in different places working on stuff that they're passionate about, and giving them a vehicle to participate. And that may, of course, be within internal the enterprise, but often it's also external to the enterprise as well. There's a lot of disruption happening. This is some stats I pulled from a survey a couple of years ago, but I still think it's really, really interesting, because this comes up in almost every client discussion that we're having. We've got new entrants disrupting our business model, people coming from a startup accelerating very fast, or coming from a country that we never previously competed with. There are new technologies emerging. Some of our competitors are taking better advantage of that. Competitors' ability to take business away from our organization is getting more significant, and we have some examples in our later on which kind of talk to that a little bit, and people do have some concerns about, well, are the things that we're selling and providing now still going to be relevant in a few years' time? And if we fear that they might not be due to technology changes, societal shifts, of course we're going to have to adapt to that. So disruption is still a big driver around here, and what that's leading organizations to believe is, well, innovation is no longer a nice to have, it's a must have. We can't live without it. It's critical to our performance, it's crucial to driving any kind of growth, and in many cases even surviving. We have to innovate just to even survive. Now, the good news is, of course, if we do it well, it's worth quite a lot of money to us. And you will have seen some of our previous webinars looking at ROI and value outcomes and case studies and things. There's a lot of benefit to be had if we can do this well. Tapping the collective insight of diverse groups is a well-proven principle now, and we need to make sure that we drive through some real revenue. And open innovation is no different. We want to focus on the areas where we can see business value emerging. So there's some organizational pressure. We've got new entrants, we've got disruption. It's harder and harder to differentiate. I'm not meeting anybody that doesn't feel stretched all of the time and needing to do more with less. And that, of course, promotes organizations to start thinking about new ways to do things. And so if you've been working the space of tapping the collective insight of your own enterprise, what will be apparent to you is that diversity of opinion has some value. Generating ideas is interesting, yes, but having different groups of people collaborating with each other, talking to each other from different departments, pushing out beyond the core team to the enterprise, exposing some of our problems and opportunities to a wider group is helping generate a better, differentiated portfolio of innovations, more ideas, greater in their diversity, pulling from that wider net. But if you follow that principle, at some point you get to the edge of that third ellipse and say, well, we've done the enterprise. What about outside the enterprise? What about our third parties, our partners, our suppliers, our customers, our academic partners? Surely it follows if we push out beyond that third ellipse, then there's even more out there to be had. And of course that's true. But equally, it comes with a set of challenges as well. And I don't want to downplay them. These are real concerns that organizations have to face at some point in time. So if we push out, do we still have that control? Do we have some concerns about the security of our data? What about IP? And what about actually motivating third parties to join in? These are people that perhaps we do not know. How do we ensure that they feel encouraged and enthusiastic about helping us innovate when perhaps we don't even have a business relationship with those groups? So those are things that we'll get to a little bit later when we start talking about tools, but they are real. They do need to be addressed at some point, and they will become something that needs to be considered to create a really effective open innovation program, of course. Now, in many cases, those perceived blockers will be the end of the conversation. We have a number of organizations who get to a point and go, it just feels too hard. We've gone out to the enterprise, that's been straightforward, we've managed to tap the collective insight, but that external step, that just feels too tricky. What I hope to put across over the course of this session is that actually there are some relatively straightforward steps which aren't so painful, which enable you to address these points in a constructive way and begin to build up your confidence with going outside. Because as I said, open innovation isn't new. We've always done it. The question is, can we make it even better? So just to conclude this first section, leaders know they need to develop more agile organizations, that the pace of change is just too fast. We need to get better at harnessing our own people and the people that we depend on that exist within the ecosystem which we reside. Now, the context is growth and efficiency, and more heavily growth when it comes to open innovation. And due to the complexity of the organization, we do need tools, yes, to harness that insight, be it from employees, suppliers, customers, or whomever. So hopefully that puts everybody on the same page and gives you some sense of what it is that's driving companies to start investing in this space, to start thinking about open innovation and scaling it up in a more systematic way. Now, to make this real, I want to talk about what's actually happening on the ground. So what is it that organizations are doing? What kind of use cases are out there? What kind of communities are they addressing? What are the easier places to start, and what kind of outcomes are they generating? So let's look at a few. Before I start on that, though, I just want to make it clear, what do we really mean when we talk about open innovation? we're really talking about diversity of opinion, and in a structured way tapping that diversity of opinion, taking a slice of our efforts or our business and exposing that to an external community so that they can contribute to it. Now that may well manifest itself in many, many different ways, and you can probably imagine hundreds of different scenarios, and there really are hundreds of different scenarios that you could address. Let's solve that problem with that partner. Let's see if that a university can help us with this research challenge that we have. Let's get some more feedback and improve our focus groups with our customers. All of this stuff potentially is in scope. So we do need to think about what's gonna help and how we're gonna do it. Now, as a software platform provider, we're the organization that are providing really the glue that sticks a lot of this stuff together. So we have a collaboration platform, most of you will be aware of that. And within an internal community, we're engaging with all kinds of different divisions on the topics that the organization cares about. So that might be cost savings or continuous improvement or developing new products and services. But we're cherry picking the right groups of people to contribute to the right conversations. And we can mirror that with our external communities as well. Suppliers, universities, customers. Now, of course, not all organizations are addressing all external communities with their open innovation programs. What they're doing is they're picking certain slices of that and certain slices of their own business and addressing particular problems. And that's what I want to kind of address today. So whether we're generating ideas or solutions, concepts, insights, best practices, it's about picking the right audience for the right conversation. And what I want to do is try and give you our view as the people that are sat in that big blue block of how is it that organizations are really making this work, and what are some of the lessons that we can share. There are some good reasons to use tools, but there are also some limitations. So from our perspective, yes, we know that the tool will deal with scale. It enables us to engage with tens, hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people if we so wish. Tools will help deal with the scale. So we're no longer restricted in our innovation efforts to how many people we can fit in a room. The other thing that tools are quite good at is giving you some process rigor. So content gets assessed, decisions are made, reporting is done, ideas and concepts are scored and ranked against each other. It gives you some structure to follow to make sure that the best stuff makes it through, as long as we marry that to a nice process. Now, over time, what we're also going to see is a build-up of a repository of great content that's come from all kinds of different sources that we can search and filter and interrogate. And so the knowledge and the portfolio management around our innovation portfolios, of course, will be supported by tools. And finally, it provides an effective platform for governance. So we can report, we can create dashboards, we can show what we have, we can show how we're doing and where we're going. But that's about the limitation of what tools will provide. So there are some other things that we need to care about. And promoting engagement. How do we ensure that the audiences that we invite feel encouraged and enthusiastic to join in? Now, some of you will be running internal programs. You'll be engaging with specific communities, and you'll see that different groups engage on different topics with different levels of enthusiasm. Of course, the same is true when we go outside the organization as well. And so what we want to do is to think about our audience members and how can we promote engagement. And when I go through each of the stories, I've picked out the motivation of the third party in every single one of them, because to me that's the fundamentally single point of failure. If we don't have a clear view of what would motivate that third party to share, the chances are they're probably not going to. Now, let's assume they do feel motivated to share. We also want to ensure they share high quality content, stuff that's genuinely useful to us. So we need to give them some focus. And then we need to make a decision on what level of collaboration we want. Now, internally, when we're engaging employees, we usually want as much collaboration as possible. Those of you who know me well will talk about, how many comments are we getting? How many people are we engaging beyond just sharing ideas? That ratio of comments to ideas is important. When we're dealing with external communities, the collaboration dynamic changes. Do we actually want all of these third parties to be able to collaborate together? Do we want to be able to restrict it so they can only collaborate with us? Do we want them to be able to collaborate within their own communities? And for us to see that, but we restrict you from other communities, we need to think about collaboration in a completely different way. And if those are the tools, we need to think about the different types of conversation we might have. And these are the 5 major types of open innovation conversation. So we have the creative conversation. How can we work together to create something new? We have the problem-solving conversation. How can we work together to solve something that we perhaps both feel is a pain point? We have discovery topics. So how can we gather expertise or knowledge from third parties that we don't already have? We have the testing conversation. This is something we do in Hyper ourselves. We take an existing concept, something that's kind of 75% there, and then we put it out there for discussion with a select hand-picked group of customers. Those people that are likely to be impacted by its implementation. What do you think? How can it be made better? What issues might be there? What do you like about it? De-risking our business and hopefully including our customers helps them to get better solutions. And of course, feedback. So this is something that you may well do with your customers right now, maybe through focus groups or other structured processes. Can we scale that and increase the amount of feedback that we get and the quality of that feedback? So the tools will do a certain part of the job, but process is also important. We then have the different flavors of the external collaboration, and that brings us on to the audience groups. Now, there are, of course, many, many different audience groups, and I've picked out the kind of the 6 that I see as most popular. So I don't want to address every single audience group because it gets pretty complicated quite quickly. But what I can do is pick out the 6 that are most common. These are the areas where organizations that are investing in this space are tending to put their energies. So existing suppliers. Who's providing with us existing goods, services that potentially we can use to help create new things? What about potential suppliers? People that might have new technology, new solutions, new services for us, but perhaps we're not working with already. The challenge with potential suppliers is, well, how do we differentiate between A over B? How do we work out which ones to work with when there are so many out there that may well have something interesting for us? Academic partners. Many of you will work with universities around the world on particular research projects. Can we scale that up? Can we involve students on that activity? Our business customers. So if we're selling into organizations, maybe we have a long-term relationship with that business. They probably have an interest in what we do. They probably would like to see it improved and made even better. They're probably interested in helping us innovate. What about consumers? Pretty tricky group. Do they really care about what we offer? What if we're a commodity? Can we involve them in some way? And of course, we have citizens. So people that we don't know, that perhaps would be consumers, or maybe we work in government and we want to include them. And what we can see from our client base is that we're operating all over the map. So there are organizations across all of these different spaces doing very different things, having different flavors of conversation with different groups. And I'm going to dig into 4, but there's all kinds of cool stuff happening out there. We've got UC San Diego engaging with 30,000 students on how they can improve the services they offer on campus. We've got people like the Maids engaging with their franchise owners, sharing best practices. We're seeing Deutsche Telekom engaging with their academic partners to engage students in problem solving. We see Munich Re reaching out to a complex network of not just partners, but also citizens and interested parties in improving school bus safety, something that everybody can get behind. So it's a really wide range of different activities that we're seeing in many different flavors. So what I've done is to pick out 4 that I think offer each offers something unique and different onto this conversation. I'm going to start off with the hardest one, consumers. These are the ones that a lot of people would love to engage, but often struggle to engage. And I wanted to use the example from Mattel. I think most people will have heard of Mattel, the toy manufacturer. They're a really good example of engaging the consumer to good effect and driving out business value from that. And I think I can probably share something a little bit new for many of you who are interested in this space. So the challenge for Mattel is, how do we build a conversation with our consumers, the people that buy our toys? How can we get them to contribute to innovation? Maybe they're not going to offer the biggest, greatest thing, but we want to include them. We want to sort of build some brand loyalty. We want to connect them to people who also love our toys and collaborate about how they're used, how they're played with. And so what we did is to set up a public platform for their Fisher-Price brand. It's called myfpideas.com. You can go and log on yourself if you wish. And it's an online focus group for interested consumers. There's no benefit for the consumer to participate commercially. There's no business value there for them. They are there because they love the brand, because they're interested in the toys, because they want to contribute. And what Mattel have is a mixture of both open channels for comments and ideas on anything that the Fisher-Price brand currently offer. And they also have campaigns. So these are targeted questions addressing a particular toy, a particular brand within the Fisher-Price portfolio, a particular need. And they're trying to engage people using this technique. And this program's been running for years with pretty good effect. These are not massive material topics. This is not the absolute future of Mattel, but it is a way of tapping into the collective insight of their consumers and giving them a voice. And you can go and look on yourself. You'll see it's a pretty interesting platform, and it's been pretty successful. One of the products that they told me last year that they launched was a high chair that can be disassembled. A high chair for small children can be disassembled and put in a dishwasher, and you can wash the whole thing without having to wipe it all down, which is anybody who has small children will know all about. And you can go and buy that on Amazon. That came from a consumer. That came from someone who was interested in the Fisher-Price brand. You know, my kids are really messy. I like this product, but wouldn't it be great if? And they went and commercialized that. And this program's become so successful, they now turn this into a TV show. So there's a TV show on ABC in the US. You can go and look it up for yourself. There's a link there. It's called The Toy Box, and it's got a scenario where people will come and pitch their ideas to kids, and kids will then test them robustly, and of course they will be chosen. So they're really passionate about engaging consumers, and as I said, they've even turned it into a TV show, which is just fantastic. So if we look at the consumer piece, and I want to turn it on its head, and I want to look at the other end of the scale, what Mattel do. Now, I picked two Mattel examples just because they illustrate two very, very different types of engagement in open innovation. And the second example that I have for you is really engaging with suppliers. Now, Mattel have always gained ideas from innovators, from, say, toy inventors, small companies around the world. But previously, they found that people were submitting it on paper, they were writing in, the formats were all over the place, there was no structure, everyone was doing it in a different way, and they were being submitted to different parts of the company. There was no rigor around this process. And although it was really valuable to get ideas pitched by toy inventors that held the IP at that stage, they wanted to improve this process. It simply didn't scale. It was incredibly labor intensive, and they knew it had value. They wanted to increase the number of inventors they engaged, but they also needed to increase the quality, because simply getting more was going to be just too much. So they put their inventor relations process online. Now, this is a single place for inventors to pitch toy concept submissions, and none of those inventors can see each other. They log in independently. It's not open for collaboration with each other. They are submitting their idea submission, their concept submission through to Mattel. They have already applied to be part of the process. They apply for permission, and they have already agreed to a set of terms and conditions, which actually indicate what kind of profit share they're going to get as if the toy is commercialized and sold out to the market. Now, they set the quality bar really high, because as I said, just generating more was not necessarily helpful. What they wanted to do was to ensure that the quality was really high. Now, I want to juxtapose what they do here versus what they do within their consumer portal. Now, in the consumer portal, if you go and log on there, it's very easy to take part. It's a very short submission form, share your idea, good, done, you're away. But in the inventor relations process, they ask a much more rigorous set of questions, and it really requires the submitter to have a fully rounded concept, a picture, a video, the whole thing thought through before they'll even accept it. And what this does is it means that only the people that are the most serious, that really have something to add, are actually going to participate. Now, the internal innovation team will process the best content, make the selections. They've got 200 inventors engaged as of last year. They have 3,000 submissions in 2015 and an implementation rate of 2%. That's 60 new toys launched from this process. That's pretty good stuff, and I think is well worthy of respect. So what can we learn from this? Well, what I would say is automating an existing manual process can have some big benefits on scale of efficiency if we do it right. Now, we're all capacity restrained, so generating more isn't helpful, but if we can use these tools to control the quality as well, that's going to be helpful. And I wanted to dig into those motivations. Why is it that people felt they wanted to share? Well, there's a number of reasons, and all of these are important. So, of course, commercial benefit has some impact. We're not going to do it unless we're going to get some value out of it. And you can, again, juxtapose that to the consumer portal. Well, people are just doing it for the fun of it. They love the brand. They think that's interesting. The next point is around leveraging the scale of the organization. Yes, they could submit their toy idea to Mattel, or they could submit it to some other toy company. who is it they're going to get their biggest benefit from? And it's the benefit of scaling through a large organization which really helps ensure that Mattel gets some of the best ideas. Because, you know, we're kind of small. We may be a couple of people. We generated a new idea. There's no way we can commercialize and take this toy everywhere around the world, but someone like Mattel can. And finally, and critically, is belief in the process. They have the process explained to them. They've agreed the terms and conditions. They understand what's expected of them. They understand what's going to happen to their ideas and concepts when they submit it. If they think they're going to drop this into a big black hole, they're not going to join in at all, even if all the other stuff is great. So belief in the process is absolutely crucial to generating enthusiasm and belief and participation in something like this. So let's move on to a very different example. This is Fujitsu. So Fujitsu, for you who aren't aware, one of the largest IT companies in the world, big Japanese IT company. And they came to us a few years ago and said, you know what, we've got a change in market conditions. We've got greater levels of competition. Customers are asking for added value, more innovation through our existing contracts. And Fujitsu were the sort of company that would sign long relationships, long deals with customers. They would do the IT outsourcing and network infrastructure, similar to IBM, if you're familiar with that type of business. And customers were saying to them, well, why should we keep working with you? What is it you're offering that's special and different? What we really want is a partner, not just a supplier. And what we really need is for you to have a deep understanding of our business, of our problems, of our challenges and opportunities, so that we can leverage the cool, interesting, and competent people that you have within Fujitsu, because you're a massive organization. You must have great ideas. You must have great innovations that we can leverage. How do we get to those? So Fujitsu's reaction to this was to establish a program called Activate. And I just want to emphasize that we're actually going to be publishing a case study on this story very, very soon. So take a look out for it on our website, and if you're registered on our systems, you also get updates on that. But this is going to be a full explanation of this story, which really talks about the ROI that they got from the program and all some of the details in terms of resourcing and how they built it up. But just to summarize, they established this Activate program, and this essentially was a collective insight program for customers, for their business customers. And they would allow business customers, they would run a campaign with a business customer who could participate in parallel with other customers, but securely separate. So, and they would focus on the core business needs. What are the problems? What are the opportunities? What are the issues that they face? And then Fujitsu would use that to gain that deep understanding of the customer's business. This might not be a large group, but it would be a diverse group, a cross-section of the organization, perhaps. And then Fujitsu would then take that content, take that learning and say, okay, can we tap into one of our established networks to see if we can solve these problems? Can we create something new? And they have a network of distinguished engineers they can tap into to bash around the problems and the needs and come up with new solutions. And they roll this out with great success, creating new products, new capabilities, improving customer relationships, and they're rolling this out all across the world now. As I said, take a look out for the case study. But what can we learn here? What's the lesson? What's the takeaway? Well, business customers want you to do better. They really do take pride in working with a progressive organization. They want to know they picked the right partner. And for you to be able to stay relevant in this fast-moving environment, we need to be agile. We need to be able to ensure that we are offering the best possible service and the most innovative solutions. Now, the online campaigns were a way of getting to a broad range of the customer's network, not just the same old people that we always talk to, because often their customers were big organizations as well. And we wanted some diversity of observation, diversity of opinion in that conversation. And using campaigns run on online tools was a way of doing that. And the customers loved the experience of collaborating amongst themselves on their needs and their problems. And to dig into this important topic of motivation, they wanted a better, more innovative partner. They were locked into this relationship for potentially many years. They wanted to ensure they had a vehicle for generating new solutions as their worlds changed. And there was a real desire, of course, to meet the business needs. Now, the good thing here is that the business customers are also under some stress, they're also in some pain. They've also got some challenges and some opportunities. And so Fujitsu will be able to complement that really nicely. And it's a really effective program. Any of you who are going to be coming to our forum in May, there'll be a number of Fujitsu people there who I'm sure will take great delight in telling you more about their program if you wish. And my final example of the day is from a company called Osram and a partnership called Enlight. And this is probably the most complex open innovation scenario that any of us can imagine, because it took a situation where we were trying to combine the collective expertise of not just partners, but also existing suppliers, potential suppliers, and academia, and then bringing them all together, even including competitors in a conversation about reinventing the European lighting industry. Now, if you're interested in this scenario, you can go and look at the Enlight website. It's a European project to pull together a whole range of different stakeholders who are facing low-cost competition from Asia. And what the Enlight group was designed to do was to see how can we improve as an industry, how can we bring the best brains that we have together to help reinvent this industry so that we can change the market, change the needs, see if we can change the game and make us not so easy to compete against when really in some cases we're just a semiconductor manufacturer competing on price. Now, the backbone for this activity was Osram, and they engaged around 220 people across around 27 different organizations. They looked for new use cases. So what scenarios do our current products and services not currently deliver to? You know, what kind of times of day, lighting scenarios, maybe you'd be able to create custom solutions for. And they also looked to try and develop new partnerships. So organizations that perhaps had never worked together, but all had the same common interest, could they come together and work together in a new way? And it was, again, nice success story. So 85 new use cases for exploitation for common benefit across the network, and 25 new feature clusters created through partnerships of numbers of organizations coming together. So instead of just a semiconductor manufacturer making lights, we had them partnering with an academic partner to create some new technology, also with a building contractor to create an integration, and selling a unique new product. So what can we learn here? Well, complex networks will co-create, providing it's within a safe space. There was a legal wrapper around this that dictated the terms of the conversation. So even though there were competitors in there, everybody bought into the fact that, we need to really improve this market. We need to change the game if we're going to survive. It's an adapt or die type scenario. And we need to be able to have this conversation within all the stakeholders that exist. And that may well include putting aside some of our competitive challenges and agreeing where we're prepared to have a conversation and perhaps where we're not going to have a conversation. But there was a compelling reason to make a change, and that created enough incentive to ensure these complex networks were coming together. And I'm even beginning to see this happening in pharmaceutical companies as well, where they're trying to de-risk the situation, but de-risk the product that they're creating by actually working with other experts in the field that may well come from competitors. They set up a joint venture. They set up some Chinese walls with their other rest of their organization, and ensure that they can create something new with the best experts around the world, wherever they work. So there's four really, I think, fascinating examples. We had one consumer example, we had one from established suppliers, one dealing with a complex network, and one dealing with business customers. And hopefully what you've seen is the real business value can be driven, but yes, there's some thought needs to go into it. And to expose some of our methodology and our approach, I wanted to run you through some of the tools that we use to help create these open innovation scenarios. And I'm not necessarily talking about the software applications, although they clearly do have an enabling aspect to it. I'm more interested in how do we create a compelling process, a compelling reason for people to share and collaborate. And yes, we're going to take advantage of some of what we know around how large, diverse groups of people behave, but also there's just some pragmatic business decisions that we need to make as well. And I want to start off with this list of questions, because this will help dictate an open innovation scenario. And an open innovation scenario is something that we can hang our hat on with regard to a compelling reason to reach out externally. If we can't answer all of these questions, we're not yet ready to reach out to the external world with our question. We're not yet ready to engage that third party or that community in the topics that we care about. So let's just run through those questions, and I want to show you something called the HYPE Open Innovation Matrix, which is something that helps plot the answers to these questions. So what's the purpose of engaging externally? What is it we're trying to do? Why is it we're actually having an external conversation? What's the purpose behind it? What's the target community? Who's in that community? Which third parties, which organizations, which people do we wish to include? Who's driving this within our enterprise? Who is going to own the next steps? Because unless there's ownership of this, then actually we're going to struggle to implement, we're going to struggle to get people to believe in the process, and we're going to struggle to engage people. What's the transaction we're looking for? As in, what is it we want people to actually share? Because we're not necessarily looking for fully rounded business proposals. Sometimes we're looking for ideas, sometimes we're looking for insights, sometimes we're looking for observations. It's not necessarily a new product or a new solution or a fully rounded concept. It may vary dramatically. What's the motivation of the target audience community? Why would they care? Why would they wish to share with us? Why would they wish to work with us in this way? And as the reason that I picked it out on all those 4 examples is because this is so crucial. If there is no motivation, we either need to create one or we're going to be wasting our time. How can we engage the target community? So tactically, what is the method? We're going to use online tools, great, but how are we going to do that? Are we going to market this activity? Are they aware of us? How are we going to get the message out there? And then finally, what's the legal framework we need to have in place to ensure that the type of conversation we want to have is appropriately protected? And if we answer those questions, well, we should come up with something that looks like this. This is the Hype Open Innovation Matrix, and we plot a variety of different answers to each of these different questions. So purpose, the addressee, what's the driver, what's the transaction, the motivation, engagement model, and then the legal framework. And what we try to do is to plot a scenario on here to ensure that we've considered all of the key factors that create a compelling reason to act. So we could look at this in comparison to any of the examples we looked at before. So let's look about the Mattel consumer example. Well, the purpose was really around feedback, maybe some option selection, maybe a little bit of co-creation. The addressee was the consumers, general public. The driver was actually around R&D and developing new things. The transactions were really insights and observations. The motivation was actually just passion for the brand and interest, enthusiasm for the topic. The engagement model, we used something called community innovations. This is essentially a configuration of the Hype platform, which allows general regular communities to engage with each other. And in terms of the legal framework, well, that's pretty clear. You can go and read the terms and conditions yourselves, but essentially everything was owned by Mattel. So we got good, solid answers for each of those, and that's one of the reasons why this was successful. So if you're thinking about trying to create an open innovation scenario, this is a really good starting point. Now, one aspect of that is technically how we're going to do this. So you're talking to a software company, you're talking to a company that's trying to act as the glue between these programs. And of course, we need to have different types and flavors of solutions depending on what the scenario is. All underpinned by the same platform, yes, but perhaps adapted a little bit and configured in such a way that they have the relevant protections in the right place. And just to give you a snapshot on how we go about doing that, we have this decision tree. We first look at the target audience. We look at whether it's one or multiple third parties, whether we're looking for collaboration between the third parties, and whether we want collaboration with our internal audience and the third parties. And we use that to define what setup Hype basically needs according to the type of answers that we give. Now, another absolutely crucial tool is around prioritization. There are many, many opportunities when it comes to open innovation. There are many third parties that we can engage with. You saw from that matrix that if you start doing the math, you'll work out there are many, many different scenarios that we could address. Hundreds, thousands of different open innovation scenarios. We need to prioritize. And that also includes prioritizing the third parties and the third party communities that we wish to engage. And we use this tool, very, very simple, as a way of scoring and ranking the different third parties that are out there. So firstly, is there a vested interest? Is there a reason for someone to share? What's that motivation? Assuming that's there, what's the quality of the relationship? Do we have a relationship? It's not necessarily critical, but certainly if we have a relationship, that's going to help. Even if we have a long-term relationship, what's the quality of that relationship? If we're not paying our bills on time, then perhaps that supplier is not going to be so keen on helping us. What's the model of engagement? So technically, can we get at the people that we wish to engage? We have a mechanism to getting to them, of promoting this activity. Just by putting something on the line isn't enough, especially if we're dealing with a citizen community or a consumer community. We need to promote it somehow. We need to invite people. And then what are the commercial considerations? What protections do we need to put in place? What's the legal bar that we need to set? If we set it too high, no one's going to share. But if we set it too low, we're not going to be protected. So we need to make sure it's appropriate for the nature of the transaction and the audience that we're looking for. Now, if we rank the various different options, different third parties against this, we'll get a sense of, okay, these 5 organizations are probably in a good position to help us. These 5 may be the next one, and these 5 are going to be much more difficult. It's a good way of just thinking about which groups are going to be in best place to support you. Now, I mentioned earlier in Mattel, we have always open channels and also campaigns, so push and pull techniques to engage communities. And again, these are tools that we can use. Some organizations only use drop boxes like the Mattel Inventor Relations scenario. Other programs only use campaigns like Fujitsu. It's about the right technique for the right scenario. So if we use campaigns, this gives us the ability to steer the innovation process, get the right ideas at the right time. But of course, we need to have resources secured. Benefits, of course, are higher implementation rates because we're focusing people on what we want to see. But of course, the downside of that is lower diversity. For some people, having a challenge is a high motivating factor. And again, we can look at that in the Mattel Open Platform, campaigns versus channels. But they do require some more management. They do require some more frequent communications to keep them on track. And we can compare that to always open channels, which are more theme-based. If you have something that looks like this put into this area, capturing ideas where there is no campaign. Mattel don't know what inventors are going to come up with, so they need to give people an open channel to submit whatever they have. But we do need to up that quality bar. We need to make sure that what they're offering is really well thought through. Otherwise, we could risk being overwhelmed by quantity at very low quality, and that's going to, of course, give us some effort. Typically, the channels not so don't drive so much collaboration, if any at all. It's much less reason to do so. We need to maybe even include the contributors in the review process. Maybe we take a short list and we invite them to come and present to us about their idea and their suggestion. So again, channels, techniques, channels and campaigns are good things to think about. What's the right method here? So let's just summarize some final tips to getting started. Prioritization is absolutely crucial. You can't do everything. You'll see that there's 4 great examples there of open innovation scenarios, but none of them are doing everything. They're all focusing in an area which has the most impact. They've asked themselves, who can actually offer us something that we don't already have? Where are our relationships strong? Where do we have legal agreements, and what are they? Which third parties are interested in a different kind of relationship? And can we raise the awareness of the activity in an efficient manner? Of course, there are many other questions, but these are the sorts of things that they thought about to start off with, which gave them that prioritization. And choose your challenge carefully. Some audiences are going to be much more straightforward, as we said, where you've got a relationship that exists, where there are goods and services already being exchanged, where legal protections are already in place. There are some more challenging spaces that may be well worth investing in. So perhaps academia, where you can create a vested interest, but perhaps there's no current agreement in place. There's a bit more work to be done. And of course, there are some really challenging places where we don't know the community at all, where we're literally sort of putting it out there and trying to promote it through any channel that we've seen. Maybe we're seen as a commodity provider, and we have to put the legal protections in place to make sure that anything that's shared is covered off. So, if you're thinking about getting started here, go after the low-hanging fruit. It's a much more comfortable place to start to build the confidence in the approach, and then move to the more adventurous spaces once you've got your experience levels there. Keep things simple. My recommendation is always to try and supercharge something that you're already working on with external input first. Pick your audience carefully. As we mentioned, suppliers and business customers are likely to be the most open to an initial conversation. Focus, engage those groups that you think are more likely to help us, where you've got the best relationships. And I think the 4th point is something I haven't touched on so far, but I think is crucial. Involve your legal support early. A lot of innovators put this to the back of the queue. They try and do all the work and then involve the lawyers, and they find that actually it becomes more difficult. My experience tells me that lawyers are actually really supportive of these programs, putting open innovation activities online, because everything's time and date stamped. They know exactly what the history is. They can control the conversation. We can control the audience. We can put the right legal protection in place for the transaction we wish to have. So they appreciate that level of control, and they've also got experience of what existing contracts are in place. So they're actually a really good conversation to have very early on in the process. They can be incredibly constructive to making sure that you have something that's viable. So we've got a few minutes for questions. I think we talked about all of this relatively recently, so so we'll go straight on into there. Certainly appreciate your time today. Hopefully that wasn't too quick. It was certainly a lot of territory to cover. But I'm now going to open up for questions, and if you just bear with me, because obviously when I'm talking, I can't see the questions that are coming in. So if you just give me one moment, I'm just going to take a look at what we have here and pick out some that are going to be relevant. So, okay, so there's a question on engaging citizens. How easy is it and straightforward is it to do that? Yeah, there's a number of organizations that are interested in engaging citizens. We have some programs in the Middle East actually doing this. Of course, the challenge with citizens is what is the topic? And how can you promote this in such a way that people feel motivated? If you go and talk to local government organizations, what they'll typically say is that engaging citizens through focus groups and discussion forums can be done, but it often only engages a subset of the community, and they struggle to engage larger groups. And one of the reasons for that is essentially, in a commercial world, they'd be seen as a commodity provider. The government's providing you with something. You're a citizen there. You don't have a choice where you're get your services from. And so the sort of level of excitement and enthusiasm for engaging on things is a little bit low. But what I have seen some traction is on topics like problem solving. So if you're humble enough to say, you know what, we're delivering a particular service, or we want to deliver a particular service, we're not sure it's as good as it can be, we're getting some feedback from you as a community. What do you think how do you think we could improve it? Where do you think, if we got these types of options, what options do you think we should pick? So involving them in the provision of new services is quite a good way. Promoting it is hard. There's no two ways about it. And of course, things like social media channels, Facebook, communities, LinkedIn communities within regions, all of these things will help. And it really comes at about the amount of effort you're prepared to put in when it comes to regular citizens and communities. But of course, start with your focus groups, start with the groups that are already engaged, use social channels to promote it. Think about the topic and the question you're asking very carefully. The creative stuff is much harder. Problem solving is a little easier. Testing something you're thinking about doing already is a really good one as well. I remember talking to a healthcare organization that wanted to change the way in which they were provisioning healthcare services. They had email addresses for quite a large community, and what we talked about is, okay, here's a scenario. Here's one way in which we may choose to provide these services. What do you think? What's your feedback? And of course, that sort of thing can work pretty well. Okay, let me just see what other questions here. Right. Yeah, it's going to share more information on the role of the internal innovation team in Mattel. So yeah, it's a really good question. The first thing I'd say is within any open innovation scenario, it's crucial that you have the capability to process the content that's going to be received. A lot of people worry about quantity. We're going to get too much stuff. And in some cases, if you don't do this right, then that is a genuine concern. I like the way in which Mattel deal with their inventor relations process, because it does have that control on quantity. So they have a group of people and selected handpicked experts that form the innovation team that act as a bridge between the external group and the people who make the decisions on which stuff gets invested in. So of course there are people working purely internally, and there are people that are acting as a bridge from the external content. So they have a group of people that essentially will filter, triage, and explore the various different solutions that are being submitted from an external source. And this is absolutely crucial. Now, they've had this team in place for quite some time. It existed before we put the process online, because of course, what happens is they needed these people when the process was manual. So what they've done is they've sort of supercharged that activity, and they've kept those people in place. But their role is to talk to the inventor, explore the topic, see if they can get a fuller and richer understanding of what the solution is, bring that back into the business, filter, score, rank based upon what their strategic areas of focus are. Because remember, they may not want to innovate in every different direction at all times, so they'll align that to their business strategy. And they'll provide that shortlist then to the decision-making group, who of course will then make those final decisions. Now, I'm slightly conscious of time, and we also have a couple of other questions that I haven't got to, I'm afraid. So in order of keeping to everyone's diary and schedule, I'm going to draw a line under this here. Mitch is going to give me a copy of these questions. If anybody I haven't got to, what I will do is I'll take those questions offline and respond to you next week when I'm back in the office. But thanks very much for your time and your enthusiasm for the topic. This has certainly been one of the more popular webinars that we've ever done. So clearly it's a topic that's of interest to large groups, and I look forward to talking to you again on the next session.
Great. Thanks, Colin, for this. And as Colin just said, we'll duly note down any remaining questions and get back to you individually. So thanks for your time, everybody, and I hope you found some inspirations and practical tips to take home. We'll send up a follow-up email with the links to the presentation and the recording, so you have the opportunity to watch it again or share it with your colleagues. After the webinar, a small set of feedback questions should pop up. Please take the 2 minutes to provide us with your feedback to help us become better at this. So thanks again, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.